Hello, my name is Simon Double, and welcome to Inside the Rails, a monthly podcast for horse racing enthusiasts everywhere. And as ever, I'm joined by my co-host, Phil Boyle from BG Racing. Hi, Phil. How are you?
Hi, Simon. I'm good, thanks. Although it does feel a little bit strange to be saying hi, given that we've taken the listeners behind the curtain a bit. We've just spent 15 minutes trying to sort our microphones out. So we're saying hello a little bit late. But I'm delighted to be back recording, and it's an early one for us this month, thanks mainly to the fact I'm going on holiday at the end of the week. Although with the weather we've had in September, I'm not sure I really needed to head off on holiday to see some sunshine. It's been fantastic here. And I think you've just returned from a weekend away yourself, have you? Where did you go?
I have, but before I answer that, where are you going?
I'm off to Kefalonia, Greek islands.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I envy you, Phil. There's absolutely no chance of me getting a holiday at this time of year, but I was very fortunate to enjoy a long weekend break down at sunny Hayling Island. And indeed, it was not just sunny, but very warm for 2 of the days. The event was a 70th birthday for one of my owners, and he kindly invited me to join his family and friends to celebrate. There were 10 of us. We stayed in a very nice hotel, great food, the odd libation, actually more than the odd libation, wonderful musical entertainment in the evenings. And I did plenty of swimming in the pool and went for a long walk on Saturday. I was actually quite sad to come home. Anyway, all good things come to an end. How have things been in the last month for BG Racing?
Well, I was tempted to say it's been a fairly stressful month, but then I have to keep reminding myself that I'm working on my hobby, and there's a lot of people who have got far more justification for feeling stressed than I do. So let's just say it's been a busy one. Yeah, unfortunately, Sajwan finished last in his 4th consecutive race, demonstrating he'd definitely fallen out of love with racing. So yeah, the good news is we've found him a new home outside of racing, and always being one to support our Inside the Rails guests. On the day our last episode was released with our interview with Jimmy George from Tattersalls, I was buying a new BG Racing horse to replace Sajwan from the Tattersalls sales.
Well, hobby or no hobby, Phil, it is tough, isn't it, when horses repeatedly disappoint, especially having shown some promise. But come on, tell me about the new horse.
Yes, his name is Strider. That's Strider with a Y, not an I. So it's Stryder. He's a 3-year-old gelding side by a top stallion in Oasis Dream. The breeding is certainly promising. On the dam side, his mother's had 4 foals, and he's the only one that hasn't won a race yet. He's had 3 races to get handicap mark, and then whilst he was 5th on his handicap debut, he seems to be improving with every run. And the winner of that race was an odds-on favourite who won quite well, and he was right in the mix for 2nd, so that was a good run. And I'm quite excited about him. But as you'll be aware, this is the busiest time for us syndicate managers. We need to sell shares to avoid being left owning large chunks of the horses ourselves. And ideally, we need to do that before the horse runs, and he's largely ready to run. So, yeah, need to crack on with that, because getting left with large amounts of unsold shares can get quite expensive for us. And yeah, it's double trouble for me, as it were, right now, because I'm still trying to sell the shares of Bella Cavallo, our jumps mare that I spoke about last month as well. So she's probably also going to start racing in the coming weeks. And yeah, so busy time for me. And with that in mind, I'm going to do a rare plug. If any of our listeners would like to get involved, if any of our listeners would like to get involved with either Bella Cavallo over the jumps or Strider on the flat, then 2% shares start at £750 for a year, and all the details can be found on my website, which is www.bgracing.syndicates.co.uk.
Very succinctly put, Mr. B. Dynamic Kate, though, come on, she's been quite busy on the track, hasn't she? Tell the listeners what she's been up to.
Yes, she has. She's been very busy. She went back to Worcester at the start of September. She had a big weight to carry there on a very hot day. That was always going to be quite tough for her. She still ran very well to finish 3rd. And then we decided to try and run her in a better race where she would have less weight to carry. And that happened at Worcester this week when she was 5th.
Yes, I watched the race. She wandered around a little bit in the closing stages. Would she have preferred better ground, maybe?
Possibly. We were worried about the ground beforehand. It had rained quite a lot in the run-up to the meeting. And the other factor was that the horse that led all the way round did hang on to win, which usually means they haven't gone very fast early in the race. And that doesn't usually suit horses like Dynamic Kate who come from behind. So whilst neither of those factors would have been ideal, and normally, as you know, we're always keen to identify a reason why a horse didn't win, but on this occasion I probably wouldn't want to offer too many excuses. There were 6 horses in the race priced at 7-1 or less, and 5 of them were within a couple of lengths of each other at the last, and all of them sort of ran their race, and there were probably 5 sets of owners thinking they'd be in the first 3, and obviously they can't all be. So, yeah, Kate got tired close home, and she did cost herself a little bit of ground by needing to be pulled back onto the course. She hung a little bit left, but she ran well, and that was no disgrace. So what about the Solario racing horses, Simon? Several trips to the races this month?
Yes, well, like Dynamic Kate, Dancing in the Woods has been quite busy, but he seems to have lost his way somewhat. So he's off to the sales, as is Tarantino, who ran okay at Leicester and was due to run at Yarmouth yesterday, but was pulled out on account of the ground being too soft. I can't remember a summer where I've pulled out so many horses because of the ground, but there we go. It's the same for everybody, I guess. He's going to struggle to get good or quick ground at this time of year. You know, even when there's no rain around, as you know, Phil, the morning dew is quite pronounced at this time of year. So getting genuine quick ground is going to be quite hard to come by. So he's being entered today for next Tuesday over on 1.25 miles at Lingfield on the artificial surface, the poly track.
Look forward to it. And what about Sharp Distinction?
Yes, now he does like a bit of juice in the ground. So he's been declared for Yarmouth tomorrow over 1 mile 6 furlongs, scene of his course and distance win last month. He should get his ground. I noticed the ground is good today, but there's more rain forecast tonight, so I'll be doing plenty of rain dances in Berkhamsted. Although there are only 7 runners, it's a tough race. Look, I'll be delighted if he's in the first 3, and I'll be bowled over if he won.
Well, both of those will, of course, have run before this episode is released. So listeners will have to check the results to see how they got on. But if they did well, I'm sure there'll be a little mention of it next month, just to give everybody a little inside track there. Yeah. Now, you said the 2 Solario horses are off to the sales. Are you looking to replace them? I do know you enjoy attending the Tattersalls Yearling sales in October. And I also know that your microphone is currently balanced on the catalogues for those sales. So are you going again this year?
I most definitely am. Look, with any business, you can't stand still, can you? So I'll be looking to buy 2 yearlings in October to replace them. I love the sales. There's a lot of work beforehand, poring over hundreds of pedigrees, deciding which ones I want to look at. Look, as you know, there are too many to view them all, so one has to be quite selective. What I like, though, about purchasing yearlings is that you're starting with a blank canvas. And who knows, you could have something half decent on your hands at a reasonable price. I remember buying Woody as a yearling, and okay, he's disappointed of late, but I only paid 15,000 guineas for him. He won first time out at Newmarket as a 2-year-old at 50-1, and yes, we did back him. He's won 4 times in total, been in the prize money more often than not, and he's taken us all to the great tracks.
That's that sounds like a good objective to have for this year's sales, and I'm sure that last month's guest Jimmy George will be delighted if you do buy something at the Tattersalls Yearling sales. So I hope you're able to say hello to him while you're there.
Yes, I will indeed try and put the face to the voice. So yeah, it'd be nice to try and catch up with Jimmy. Now, you and I saw the first of Arc's, that's Arena Racing Company's syndicate lounges at Lingfield last year, and I'm delighted that Arc have rolled them out across all of their tracks. And I had my first visit in about 11 years to Bath last week, and was impressed with their new syndicate lounge, which was being used by people, which was great to see. Hopefully that'll please Rebecca Davis, who works for Arena Racing Company. She was, of course, a guest on Inside the Rails.
Yep, she was. And I've mentioned before that I've used those syndicate lounges at several of the courses this summer. I really think they're a great development. Whilst the race courses are often unable to provide a meal for larger groups, having the syndicate lounge access is, in fact, it's often preferable to me, because you can get your group together to socialise, and often in a crowded owner's lounge, that's not always possible with a large group. So, yeah, those syndicate lounges really helping out.
Well, I'm glad you like the syndicate lounges too. That'll also be music to Rebecca's ears. Now, on to racing. First of all, the St Leger, the oldest English classic, which dates back to 1776. It's the last of the 5 classics each year. And this year's renewal, as ever, held at Doncaster, was bound to throw up a story. And indeed it did. Could Frankie go out with a bang and win on his final English classic ride, Arrest, and complete another Magnificent 7, this time Magnificent 7 St Leger successes? Would Desert Hero win for His Majesty the King? Or would the Aidan O'Brien juggernaut just blow them all away to record his 7th St Leger win? Well, in the end, those three horses finished in the first three. And although Frankie's Arrest went off the 11-4 favourite, it was continuous for Aidan O'Brien, who recorded an impressive 2 3/4 length success. Frankie was second, and Desert Hero was third for the King. Were you impressed with continuous, Phil?
I was, but not as impressed as I was by you managing to get through a couple of paragraphs of 7 St Ledger successes without any stumbles. There was an awful lot of S's in there.
If you name Simon, you have to have S's, don't you?
Yeah, there is. I don't think I'd have got through it untouched. I think I might have troubled there.
Thank you.
But I must admit, I thought Continuous might be in trouble about a quarter of a mile from home, but he did run on really powerfully and looked better the further they went, I thought. It was an enjoyable St Ledger meeting, quite a profitable one for me. I backed a decent price winner on the first and last days of the meeting. And the last day, of course, saw the Legends race with several top ex-jockeys getting back into the saddle. And did you see who won?
I did indeed. Our very first Inside the Rails guest, Tom Scudamore. Some 3 years ago, we had Tom on. He scooted clear for a comfortable 2 1/4 length success aboard the maybe aptly named I Still Have Faith. He was the 100-30 favourite, and another Inside the Rails guest, former champion jockey Paul Hannigan, was second. Do you know what, Phil? We should have done the forecast. It paid over £80 for a pound, and the exactor, which is the tote exactor, paid £103.40. Tell you what, we could have retired. What about the other races, Phil? I know you enjoy your Irish racing.
I do, and I really enjoyed Irish Champions Weekend. It seemed to be one quality race after another. I think that was enhanced by the number of UK runners that made their way over the Irish seas to take on the home contingent. And that's something I think's been lacking from the January Dublin Racing Festival over jumps. So it would be great to see some of our top jumps horses heading over there in the same way that the top Irish horses do for our big meetings, because it definitely adds a bit of spice to the meeting. There's also been syndicate runners at all the big meetings and in many of the big races as well. So it just goes to show that shared ownership can give everybody the opportunity to own a runner on the biggest stage and indeed live in the dream.
Oh, very good, Mr. B. I know where you're going with this one. And may I say, what a silky smooth segue that was.
Yeah, I must admit, I was quite proud of that one. Yeah, I'm talking about the Nunthorpe big race at York, which saw a success for the Epsom trained horse Live in the Dream. It's not a syndicate-owned runner, but it was a victory for the small guys against the big guns, and that really appealed to me, especially as the winner is trained on Epsom Downs, where obviously I spend a lot of my time with my horses. The trainer there, Adam West, but it was just a huge success for the whole of Epsom, really. Listeners might remember a former guest of ours, Andrew Black, who was very keen to see Epsom re-established as a big training centre, and wins like that can only help. It was great to see.
Yes, I always think it's nice to see big winners spread around different owners, trainers, and indeed training centres. So top hats off to Epsom. Right. Now, we've touched upon it before, but it's the hot topic, and I think we should touch upon it again. Affordability checks. It's the big topic in racing.
It is. And, you know, our view with the podcast is to try and take a positive view as our default position, really. But this is one I am really worried about. Probably the biggest development in September was a meeting of the House of Commons subcommittee, who questioned the minister responsible for this area and the chief executive of the Gambling Commission. I'm sure both gentlemen are good guys and highly competent, but what they don't know, they can't do anything about. And a couple of their comments showed that there are things that maybe they don't know regarding sort of certain key matters. So Stuart Andrew, the sports minister, said that affordability checks would not be introduced unless they're truly frictionless. But that would seem to imply that he's maybe unaware that this ship might have already sailed. I know people who've already been asked to produce evidence that they can afford their betting. So, those checks are already sort of creeping in. And next up was Andrew Rhodes, the Gambling Commission chief executive, who downplayed suggestions that people could turn to black market betting. Seemed to think that wasn't really ever going to be an issue, but I would suggest it is. I'm getting at least one text, email or WhatsApp message every week offering me an avenue to bet with no checks or controls. And obviously, as an owner in racing, I know these operators are not paying anything back into racing, and I would steer well clear of them. But if someone else feels they can't get a bet on elsewhere without a massive intrusion into their privacy, I'd be surprised, amazed even, if they didn't consider going down that black market route. And yeah, by suggesting that this is not much of an issue, I can only assume Andrew's not aware just how many of these operators are out there pitching their services to UK punters already.
Well, I think if some of those committee members seriously think the black market is not and won't be an issue with intrusive affordability checks, they've either got their heads buried in the sand or they're living in cloud cuckoo land. Choose your own avian metaphor. And Phil, can you explain about frictionless checks? What are they, and are they too good to be true?
My understanding, and I would hasten to add I'm not an expert on this, is that the frictionless checks that they're talking about are those that should take place in the background and that the person involved should be unaware of them and not impacted by them. So the kind of examples they're quoting are online searches for county court judgments around having debt or possibly credit rating checks. You know, the kind of stuff that would go on behind the scenes if we applied for a bank account or a mortgage.
Okay.
And that may be possible in racing, but several people more knowledgeable than me have suggested that there's not that much searchable data out there that could be reviewed in a frictionless manner to actually achieve the kind of results that the gambling white paper suggests are necessary. So, yeah, once an individual gets into the realms of having to answer questions from a bookmaker or provide financial documentation, then that's plenty of friction. That's certainly not frictionless. So I'm still hoping that other avenues will be explored to try and identify people who are, you know, perhaps changing their betting patterns, either in terms of their staking or their volume of bets. That kind of thing would highlight people who have a problem or are heading down a dangerous path without impacting on people who are just not displaying those kind of markers.
Well, Phil, look, I still come back to my basic objection to affordability checks. It's no business of the state how I spend my legally earned taxed income on illegal activity. Sorry, end of.
Indeed. Anyway, let's change the subject to something more upbeat. I wanted to ask you about your plans for the coming weeks. We've heard you're going to be at the Yearling sales, but did I hear that you're off to the Arc as well?
Yes, I'm hosting a long weekend to Paris for the Arc De Triomphe for 10 people, including 3 of my owners and their other halves. We're going by Eurostar on the Friday, staying about 20 minutes walk from the Arc de Triomphe, going to the Arc de Triomphe race meeting on Sunday at Longchamp. And we have 3 very different and fabulous restaurants to dine at on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday nights. I've eaten at all of them. And then it's back to London early Monday evening. So it's a mixture of racing, good French food and wine, and people will have time to explore Paris as they wish on Saturday and Monday. One of the ladies who's going, she's in her 90s. She has limited mobility, but she's bringing her mobility scooter with her. And she's going because she's a massive Frankie fan and wants to witness his last ride in the Arc. How good is that?
Yeah, that's great. And it's just another example of how Frankie Dettori's farewell tour is doing so much to get racing into the spotlight at the moment. It's really given us some positive publicity this year. And speaking of positives, I thought the Racing League took a step forward this year. The meetings offered good prize money, which in turn attracted competitive fields, and that generated plenty of betting interest. I know you're a fan. What did you think?
I enjoyed it very much. Good to see Team Ireland rise like a phoenix from the ashes. There you are, another avian metaphor. They put behind a desperate show last year to win this year's Racing League right at the death. It went right to the wire. It was great competition, a great atmosphere at all the 6 meetings, and I thought, as ever, ITV Racing covered it very well.
Indeed, all good to see. Although I probably ought to hark back to my comment from a previous podcast in that I think they probably ought to rename the teams, given that Team Ireland was represented by a lot of runners trained in the UK, several of whom trained by your trainer in Newmarket, Amy Murphy. So, Kevin Blake was the winning racing manager. So I'm not going to congratulate Team Ireland. I'm going to congratulate Team Blakey's Bloodstock because that will hopefully reinforce my point. But coming back to shared ownership, we've got the next Great British Racing shared ownership event at Cheltenham in October. Yeah, I can't believe it's jump season already. But if any of our listeners are at Cheltenham in October, please do go and check out some of the syndicates and racing clubs that will be there. Sadly, I won't be having a stand because I don't want to miss the action when I'm at Cheltenham races. It's my passion. But people are welcome to come and see me after they've seen all the stands in the Syndicate Village. Come and see me on the viewing steps and have a chat about BG racing at the same time.
Well, look, like you, I won't be at Cheltenham, but I will be at the final Great British Racing promo event at Ascot in November, and I know you'll be there too.
I most certainly will. That's always a really fun couple of days. Now, listeners might have noticed that we've been rambling on for longer than usual this month, and that's because we haven't got a guest interview. I believe, however, you've lined up a couple of trainers for the near future.
Yes, our producer always thinks it's quite good for once a year, maybe just to have you and me talking and rambling on without a guest. So that's what we've done this time. But I'm delighted to report we've got two very good flat trainers who've been a big part of the British racing scene for many years. We've got two of them lined up, Rod Millman and Clive Cox.
Great news. There's certainly a couple of people that I'm looking forward to hearing from. But as always, I'll sign off by asking our listeners for a favour. You clicking like buttons or following us or subscribing to Inside the Rails, leaving us a positive review and telling people about us on social media, they all help us to grow the podcast. So any of that you can do will be very much appreciated. And you can also get in touch with Simon or myself via Twitter. Our log on there is at Inside the Rails, or using our contact details, which you can find in the show notes wherever you downloaded or streamed this episode from.
That just leaves me to thank co-host Phil Boyle from BG Racing, producer Callum Ronan from Callum Ronan Creative, and of course you, the listeners. As the Indian summer draws to a close and a jump season proper beckons, there's still plenty of top quality flat racing to come. Frankie has won 2 English Classics already this season. Will he win the Arc? Will he even retire? This is Simon Double from Solaria Racing saying, thank you for listening to Inside the Rails, and until next time, goodbye.